What's up, guys? Back with another edition of the Sports Rundown Radio. Back with us again is Ben and Kanan and Tyler. Going to be going over some big news in the NFL, MLB, NBA, and the NCAA. So we'll go ahead and start it off with the NFL. Big news coming out of the Saints organization. Drew Brees out for at least 6 weeks with a torn thumb ligament. Also, another ref, debacle.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go over Drew's injury. Came early in the first quarter. I believe it was Aaron Donald. He hit his throwing hand on Aaron Donald, who was attempting to deflect a pass, and I believe it just jammed his thumb. When he went over to the sidelines, they said he could not even grip a football. They had it wrapped up. They were hoping he might be able to return. Hopefully it might have just been a sprain. But unfortunately, it looks like he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks. They said 6 is their goal. That's what they're hoping for. But it's more than likely he will not be able to return until week 11.
Yeah, and then, Teddy Bridgewater, it seemed like they were calling him the successor of Drew Brees. It seems like he couldn't really get anything done this game versus the Rams. While it is against the Rams and they are a good defensive team, it just seems like they couldn't get anything done. Also, the refs weren't helping because Cam Jordan, he had that scoop and score, I believe it was 85 yards, that got not turned around, but so it was a fumble on the play, and instead of letting the play go out, the refs blew the whistle, which called the ball dead, which the Saints got the ball, but it negated the touchdown, I guess you could say.
So you see, when an official blows a play dead, they can review everything. They can review a change of possession, whatever, but any return on a change of possession, whether the play was because the play was blown dead, like Chandler said, is negated. So even though, despite seeing that Cam Jordan clearly recovered the fumble, and every single player on the field assumed it was a fumble, they all were still playing full speed. Nobody stayed back. I mean, you saw like Cooper Kupp was like charging down the field trying to tackle Cam Jordan. Everybody played like it was a fumble because everybody in the field assumed it was a fumble. But because of the fact that the play was blown dead, the entire return was negated, and I believe the Saints didn't even get any points out of that turnover. And like Chandler was saying with Teddy Bridgewater, he was only able to get, 6 points upon entering the game. Didn't punch anything into the end zone. Nothing was really clicking with the offense chemistry-wise. Had some errant throws. He didn't throw an interception, though, which was good, but his throws just weren't on target like Brees was. It's not something the Saints are used to seeing.
Yeah, everybody kind of feel for Teddy Bridgewater. He comes into the fire, so to say, as far as not really being prepared for Brees going down. But I think this week they go to Seattle. Seattle's not a very overwhelming team, but it is tough to play there. The good news is Bridgewater and Hill will be able to get the reps they need in practice to be successful. I think that'll actually set those two guys up to have a good game this week, and it won't be as tough, as far as them just getting thrown into the game. I think the playbook for them will be a little bit better. Maybe he won't be so hesitant, in the pocket where Brees shreds the defense. We saw Bridgewater really struggle, but really the key with the Saints, they need to win the next 4 out of the 6 games to get to November when possibly Drew Brees can make a comeback, and that's going to be a November 10th game against the Falcons when the conference play really starts getting going. So hopefully Brees comes back with a rested arm, and he's got 8 weeks left of the season where they can make a deep postseason run.
So for one big injury to another, Drew Brees being out, now the Steelers starting quarterback Ben Roethlisberger is out for the season with the elbow injury. Mason Rudolph going to have to step up, former Oklahoma State quarterback. I believe he's been in the league for 2 to 3 years. I know he's relatively young. So looking to see what he can do with Juju Smith-Schuster. and James Conner. Also, Vance McDonald, the tight end, some big time receivers. Let's see what he can do, especially since the Steelers were making a look deep postseason run.
Well, yeah, like you said, that big three that they had going, they had Big Ben, James Conner, and Juju Smith-Schuster. Like Conner has been injured, and now that Ben Roethlisberger goes down, it's really put a damper on that very powerful Pittsburgh offense. They're going to have to rely on Juju and Vance McDonald, but James Conner is supposed to come back this week, so I'm sure the run game will be more heavily utilized this week. So we'll have to see how the offense does.
Yeah, you talking about how they're going to have to rely on the run game. We can go into the top fantasy guys, because starting off at the running back position, Dalvin Cook, 20 carries for 154 yards, 1 touchdown. Also had 3 receptions for 37 yards. Seems like when the Vikings were playing the Packers, they couldn't really get anything going in the air, so Dalvin Cook kind of had to pick it all up. He had 154 yards rushing with a touchdown, even though the Vikings lost in a close game. You kind of see Dalvin Cook kind of put the team on his back for the Vikings.
Yeah, having Dalvin Cook on your fantasy team or as your home team as the Vikings, it's definitely not a bad mistake. He's got 41 attempts on the season and has 265 yards and 3 TDs already. So last year he had 615 over 133 attempts. So he's definitely started off this year at a fast pace, and let's just hope he can stick through.
Yeah, and we're talking about top fantasy performers. We'll go over to the quarterback position. Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs, which is no big surprise. Former MVP of the league. He was 30 for 44, had 443 yards and 4 touchdowns. Big time performer for the Chiefs.
I mean, we didn't really talk about Patrick Mahomes in last week's video when we analyzed statistics. I mean, even though he put up an amazing game, he just didn't perform at the top of all these fantasy scores. We saw him I believe he had more touchdowns last week than he did this week, but we saw him step up, rise to the occasion, and I believe he set a record for most touchdown passes in a quarter. I believe all 4 of his touchdown passes came in the second quarter, which topped Drew Brees' previous record of 3 1/4. So really, all the points for the Chiefs came in that 28-10 win, all came in the second quarter. So we see Mahomes wasn't able to do much for the remainder of the game following the first half, but we still see him put up monster numbers even in a single half of amazing football.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to point it out. Last week, he had 378 yards with 3 touchdowns. And this week, he bounces back and has 443 yards with 4 touchdowns. So definitely a monster season for Patrick Mahomes. And it's translating over to his teammates. The wide receiver position for the top fantasy is Demarcus Robinson, who, honestly, I didn't know who he was. He's a young guy, I believe, and he had 6 receptions for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's crazy that one person can affect the whole team. With Patrick Mahomes, he's carrying, it seems like, the entire Chiefs team. Their defense is stepping up, but that wide receiver core is performing well too, because Patrick Mahomes is putting up those monster numbers.
Yeah. The good thing about the Chiefs, they got a variety of wide receivers at the position, even with Tyreek Hill still down with the collarbone injury. So pretty much if there's anybody in your league from the Chiefs at the wide receiver position, it might not be a bad idea to drop a not so good guy and take a risk.
Yeah, and like I was saying, he's a relatively young guy. It's his 4th season. He got picked in the 2016 draft, round number 4, and was was the 126th pick. So we saw Sammy Watkins last week was a big-time performer. And this week it seems like Demarcus Robinson for the Chiefs was also a big-time performer. So we talked about the quarterback, the running back, the wide receiver, top fantasy performers, but kind of a surprising top fantasy performer was the Patriots defense.
Yeah, dominance showing last week against the Steelers. They just allowed 3 points to them, and that was before the injury of Ben Roethlisberger and James Conner. So let's fast forward to this week against Miami. Like Chandler said, a little odd. A defense shows up in the top 5 fantasy performers as far as points go. They had 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 7 sacks. Allowed no points. If you play ESPN PPR, that's going to give you 35 fantasy points. So not quite often you see a defense put up that many points, but this squad did. So looks like the Patriots got it going on over there.
All right, so now we'll transition over to the MLB. Last week we talked about Yelich going out for the rest of the season. This week, big news coming out: Mike Trout will be out for the rest of the season for a foot surgery. It's bad. 2 big superstars are out for their teams, and y'all have anything to comment on that? Just big time loss for those teams.
Yeah, but the thing about Mike Trout's season-ending injury, the Angels, they began the day at 67-82, and so hope we have a speedy recovery for Mike Trout, and hopefully he'll get back normal and be ready for next year.
Yeah, if we want to go further in depth into his injury, it was more of a nerve issue in his foot. They said that Trout has a thickening of tissue around the nerves in the ball of his right foot. It's called Morton's neuroma. So what they're just going to go in and remove that big piece of nerve just to help him. He had a little bit of an issue walking, so he said he had lots of flare-ups that affected his play. So it's not going to be that detrimental to the Angels considering they didn't make the playoffs. But Trout, it's going to be detrimental just to him because he's hit 291 on the season with 104 ribbies. And he was in contention to win his 3rd AL MVP. He's throughout his career, he's already got 4 second-place finishes and has won it twice. And, he's only 28, just signed that 12-year, $426.5 million contract. So the Angels are going to be having him for a long time. And like Ben said, we just hope for a speedy recovery for the young center fielder.
So transitioning to the next story, Charlie Culberson for the Braves was hit in the face during an at-bat. He wasn't injured. He was able to avoid surgery, but in that kind of situation, the Braves manager Brian Snitker, was ejected. He was arguing that the pitch that hit Culberson was a strike. So maybe y'all can give a little more details about that. Kind of explain what happened.
Yeah. So what actually happened was Culberson was at bat in a very crucial part of the game. It was the top of the it was the top of the 7th inning. They had runners on 1st and 2nd in a tie game with the Washington Nationals. It was tied 1-1. So Atlanta's looking to bust this game open. They didn't have any outs, so they were in a really good situation to score some runs. They asked Culberson to lay down a sac bunt to move the runners over to 2nd and 3rd. When he squared around, the pitcher Fernando Rodney threw a fastball. It was a little too much inside. It ended up hitting Culberson in the face, fracturing some facial bones. So Culberson went down, had to be carted off the field. But moving on to what you said about Snitker, they had to have a pinch hitter come in and bat for the rest of Culberson's at bat because, according to MLB rules, due to the fact that he did not pull his bat back, it's considered a strike despite being hit by the ball. So Snitker came out and argued, saying that, quote, it was too fast for him to be able to get out of the way of the ball on that. Didn't have enough time to react and pull the bat back and be able to get out of the way of the pitch. There was blood all over the ground. It was a pretty gruesome sight if you watched it, if you're a Braves fan. But Snitker also, along with some profanities, one of the few things he said that wasn't profane was that it was shame on you is what he said to the umpires before he finally walked off the field.
Yeah, just a bad thing for the Braves. Your manager got ejected. One of your playmakers is going to be out. I assume he's not going to have surgery, but he's not. He's still going to be out because he fractured a few face bones, like Kanan said. But big loss right there for the Braves. But we'll transition into the power rankings. Coming up to the postseason for the MLB, seeing who's getting that wild card spot, see who's in, see who's out.
Yeah, I mean, we got these obvious contenders like the Houston Astros. They've been up there all season. Right now, they're sitting at 98 and 53. They rank second in runs scored this season and fourth in ERA. So they got both their hitting and their pitching down pat. We talked about in our earlier videos about how right before the trade deadline, they brought in a lot of guys to help solidify that pitching rotation, and it looks like it's paid off as they are definitely going to very quickly hit that. They're going to be the first to hit that 100 mark, more than likely. In second place, we have the Dodgers. They moved up from last week. They traded places with the Yankees. Last week, they were ranked third. New York Yankees this week are ranked third. They were ranked second. Dodgers right now sitting at 97 and 52, and Yankees are sitting at 98 and 53. And we mentioned earlier the Braves, they're actually fourth in the power rankings. It's actually been a really good year for the Braves. They haven't been that dominant in recent years, but we see them leading their division. They're 93 and 58 right now. And finally coming in at fifth is the Minnesota Twins, who have just been on an absolute tear offensively. They've already set the MLB record for the most home runs by a single team in a season. So right now they're sitting at 91 and 58. Those are your top five in the MLB, and we'll see how the playoff race will end up as we're getting closer and closer to October.
So I believe that'll do it for the MLB. Next up, we'll talk about the NBA.
All right, guys, we're going to move on to NBA basketball. First story we have up this podcast is going to be Michael Jordan has sold a bit of a share of the Charlotte Hornets organization to two investors based out of New York. It says that Jordan still owns 97% of the team, but the Hornets have not been good in recent years for probably close to a decade. If you don't remember, back when they were the Bobcats, they ended up having the worst season in NBA history. I believe they won 12 games out of that entire season. But currently, the Charlotte franchise is worth $1.9 billion, but it's declined $0.6 billion since Jordan bought the team in 2010. So it's now worth $1.3 billion. So we see this team not only declining athletically wise, player wise, but also value wise.
Big news in the basketball world. Ricky Rubio and Marc Gasol lead Spain to their second FIBA championship. I believe they won over Argentina, and USA, I believe, placed seventh. So not really news, not really big news either. Just kind of had to get that out of the way for Kanan Bird to enjoy himself. So next up, we'll have NCAA football. So now on to the NCAA. Big news out of Florida. Their quarterback, Felipe Franks, is out for the season with a dislocated ankle. Kanan, you want to kind of go more in depth about it?
Yeah, Felipe Franks is the redshirt junior quarterback for the Gators, and we saw him carted off the field in the third quarter after suffering that right ankle injury. And so what actually happened was it was a 4th and 1. Gators were trailing at the time 21-10. He got flushed out of the pocket, and when he turned back upfield to go for the first down, he got stopped short, but when he was tackled, he fell underneath an O-lineman, and his ankle bent the wrong way. It was a very disturbing sight to see if you were watching the game. I know Tyler and I both were watching the game, and it's just tough to see. He's a big guy, and you could just see him in grueling pain. So we saw him get carted off. He only had 174 yards that game, but Florida did end up coming back and winning that game against number 11 Kentucky.
Yeah, Kanan, once the training staff tended to him, he was clearly in pain. He's obviously the hammers and nails of the team. He had everybody from his teammates to his coaches all on the field, walked with him back to the locker room while he was being carted off. They had an air cast on his leg and took him to the tunnel to get more medical attention. The big thing for the Gators going here forth is their backup that's going to be taking charge of that offense. Also, redshirt junior Kyle Trask takes over with 3:27 left in the third quarter and is down by 11. Doesn't throw any touchdowns or interceptions, but he does lead them back those 11 points with 126 yards of 9 and 13 passing. Also getting snaps for them was their redshirt freshman Emory Jones. So it's going to be interesting to see who wins that QB battle and what the Gators do from here. Looking from the outside in, why they're still ranked in the top 10 makes no sense at all. I think there's a couple other deserving teams that could be in their place, considering that they barely won that 24-20 game against Miami. Just from here on out. I mean, obviously, if you look at it, Kentucky could have won that game. I think the difference maker for them was the turnovers, and they turned the ball over 3 or 4 times, and the Gators scored all 3 or 4 of those times. So I think that was the downfall for that team. I don't think Florida outplayed them at all. They shot themselves in the foot on that, and the score shows that.
Moving on to the next story, we're talking about Mississippi State quarterback Garrett Schrader. It's been all over the news, all over SportsCenter, any sports type of media that you might view. The hit that he took against Kansas State was absolutely monstrous. He got helicoptered in midair. Ben's going to have video of this playing over this audio, but it was one of the biggest hits I've seen in a while. Ben, you want to keep talking about it?
Oh, yeah, man. Just a quarterback, team player, fighting for the first down marker. I believe it was like a 4th and 15. But having a guy like that going all at it, kind of like a Taysom Hill kind of guy. But Kansas State coming in on defense played outstanding, man. Like I was watching their victory 31-24, silencing the cowbells. I don't know if y'all have ever been there, but them cowbells, man, talk about a headache.
Moving into the final topic of today's podcast, we're going to talk about how the SEC is completely dominant right now in the top 10. Out of the top 10 teams, the SEC has 5 of them. We see Alabama at 2, Georgia at 3, LSU at 4, Auburn at 8, and Florida at 9. And Tyler, I want you to talk about the ACC being in the top 10.
Well, and that front runner is Clemson. You got to give it to them. They won the national championship last year, so you can't really move them out of that spot. I mean, on their schedule this year, they played 2 ranked teams in Syracuse, and I believe the other one would have been Maryland, and they got beat by Temple 20-17. So other than that, the ACC, it's good to see the SEC came back, though. For a while now, the SEC looked like they were trending downwards. Now this year, you see 5 in the top 10. Hopefully that stays the same, and this conference can still be one to reckon with, and it doesn't give way to the rest of these teams. You can't take away the talent that these other conferences have, but it's good to see the SEC's back.
All righty, that'll do it for this edition of the Sports Rundown Radio. We talked about the NFL, the NCAA, MLB, and NBA. Looking forward to bring you next week's content. We'll be filming it soon. Again, we are doing 2 a week, seeing how long this can kind of go. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Those links will be in the description. Make sure to like and subscribe. Another big thanks to Tyler for joining us this episode. Another big thanks for Ben for editing the videos. Thanks for Kanan for, doing his thing. And for Philip for running our Instagram. So I believe that'll do it for the Sports Rundown team. Again, thanks for Tyler for joining us. For Chandler Ducote, for Kanan Bird, for Ben Lejeune, for Tyler Lejeune. That'll be it. Peace out.